Hi. Many of you asked about what was the impetus for me to write the We Are One essay. I'm going to share the story here, but first I want to thank all of you for the outpouring of love over the last week. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. I wasn't going to speak up publicly about this, but there are many leaks coming from within Google, including false allegations and personal information. Hence, I felt the need to do this. Here we go. Before I can share what inspired me to write that essay, I first need to tell you about the diversity, equity, and inclusion principles, DEI for short, that we are trained on at Google, especially as managers. Number one, we are encouraged to bring our authentic, true self to work, as that is necessary to attract and retain top talent. Number two, being vulnerable and open-minded is critical when addressing DEI topics. Number three, we need to support a psychologically safe environment where the opinions of all Googlers are valued, incorporating the needs and viewpoints of our full diversity, which should reflect the world Google serves. Number four, we need to have the courage to have the conversations. I repeat, we need to have the courage to have the conversations, especially across dimensions of difference. And number five, leaning into discomfort. Leaning into discomfort is what creates the right space where learning is happening. In DEI training, we also learn about privilege, how we should lend it by becoming an ally to others, but also that many might assume we don't have the best intentions during pitfalls as a consequence of less privilege. In the description, I link to a short DEI video which accompanied Google's most recent diversity report and highlights a number of these key principles. In the first 2 weeks of June, the Google Leadership School delivered to me and about a dozen Google VPs the best executive training I have ever received in my life, hands down. It's called Leadership Immersion for VPs, Vice Presidents. In that training, I left with 3 key lessons that I plan to practice for the rest of my life. Number one, listen and truly reflect on other people's stories before making assumptions. Number two, tell your own story with authenticity and, more importantly, vulnerability. And number three, as leaders, we have to apply our full agency to co-write the future instead of watching it being written for us. During that training, we were immersed in a number of world conflicts to see practical examples of how agency can be applied to change the world around us for the better. Typically, Google would fly us out around the world for this kind of training, but instead, we did it over video conference due to COVID. We met theaters of witness of North and South Islands, heartlines of South Africa, and roots/Tahrir of Israel and Palestine. By the way, Tahrir means change in Arabic. It was amazing to see practical examples of how these empathic leaders leverage authentic, vulnerable storytelling to get us to see each other as humans, despite vehement disagreement or even raging anger in some cases. In this photo on the screen, you can see the founder of Roots on the left, an Israeli rabbi named Shaul Judelman, and the founder of Tahrir on the right, a Palestinian ex-rebel named Ali Abu Awad, just hanging out together as bros. They are both on a mission to help people overcome their fears of the other in order to develop mutual understanding and solidarity despite ideological differences. This leadership immersion is what inspired me to start applying my full agency through authentic, vulnerable storytelling to change the world around me, both inside of Google and outside. I was so inspired by Rabbi Shaul Judelman and Ali Abu Awad. I heard about all the great work that they are doing to foster conversations between the Israelis and the Palestinians right across the walls of settlements, and how these conversations were leading to new friendships being forged. I heard Rabbi Shaul and Ali speaking so highly of each other, and even saying that they would sacrifice their own lives to save each other. They're best buddies. So their story gave me a ton of hope that the world can indeed be a better place if we were to all share our stories authentically and vulnerably, so that we start to see each other as human versus the other. I then saw Ali Abu Awad's powerful TEDx talk that he gave in Jerusalem, and the talk is titled Painful Hope, where he told his own story of maturity and how he matured from being a rebel to being an advocate for peace. I got so pumped up about how this is the path for peace. So next, I donated to both Roots and Tagir, then decided to apply the lessons I learned to share my own story of unlearning prejudice and learning love, with the goal of showing others, especially in Egypt and the Arab world who know me, that they can do this too. And to be very transparent, a secondary motive was to solicit donations for Roots and Tagir, which I mention more than once throughout my piece. I want to share also that it was very uncomfortable for me to share what I have shared. But I did it with the goal of showing that we all can change in this way. The essence of the We Are One essay, the core of the message, is that we as babies, we are born with only love in our hearts. Love for all humans, love for all animals, love for everything, really. We just love everything when we're babies. Then, as we grow up, our parents, inadvertently, our history, ideologies, religions, stories, the media, corrupts our brain a bit, which can lead us to build certain illogical prejudices. It's on us, all of us, as we mature, to catch that in ourselves, like I did, and unlearn that corruption to love all again. I did it, and so can you. That was the message. I was so excited to share my story, demonstrating that maturation. And according to many of my friends, thank you, many of them said I should have chosen some of my words more carefully. But I was aiming for just being authentic, true, vulnerable, and just sharing my story. I wasn't trying to be polished, to be honest. I should have chosen my words more carefully, and for that, I am indeed sorry. Next, I noticed we had internal tension between Googlers who are Jewish, Arab, Palestinian, and Muslim due to the recent unrest in the Middle East. The timing was around the same time. I was further inspired, and to be honest, brought to tears a little bit, by a Creators for Change video, which was sponsored by YouTube. Again, I repeat, sponsored by YouTube, which brought Israelis and Palestinians together to talk respectfully to each other. Then they shared a meal together at the end. It was so inspiring to see. So, to help reduce the tension inside of Google and to give the less vocal voices a chance to be heard, I was inspired to arrange a listening circle which allows everybody to share their story authentically, with the goal of telling their story versus seeking to convince each other, and to be able to do so without being judged, without being interrupted, and more importantly, without being silenced by the louder voices, which I've seen happen. And by the way, these listening circles are very common at Google for many other DEI topics. It isn't a novel concept per se. By all practical measures, the listening circle was a resounding success. Everybody, I repeat, everybody that raised their hand to speak in that listening circle got a chance to speak. And they were respectfully listened to. The meeting started with more than 100 Googlers tuned in, and almost all of them stayed till the very end, even after we extended the time from 90 minutes to 2 hours. I received plenty of unsolicited feedback from dozens and dozens of Googlers, acknowledging that this event made them proud to work at Google, where such respectful conversations can take place across dimensions of difference. I should note that a DEI representative attempted to stop the meeting from being extended by 30 minutes, which would have been very, very harmful to the folks who waited patiently and respectfully for 90 minutes for their turn to speak. So that truly shocked me, because we are told that silencing voices, especially quite respectful voices, is what creates an unsafe workplace, not the opposite. I did let the meeting continue, and I let everybody that had their hand up get a chance to speak. A few weeks later, after my essay and this internal listening circle, I was completely stunned and confused by employee relations serving me a written warning saying that some folks felt uncomfortable, unincluded, and unsafe because of the listening circle and because of certain statements that I made in my essay. Then, 2 weeks later, I got fired. I truly believe that Google is set to change the world for the best, as fair, universal access to information is what will prevent prejudices from building up in the new generation's brains. I truly believe that, for we are all born with only love in our hearts. I really love that Google tells us to bring our true, authentic self to work. For not only is that good for business, it helps attract and retain top talent. Plus, enables Google to reflect the world population that they are set to serve. I should note that Muslims represent approximately 30% of the world that Google is serving, if you subtract out China, where Google doesn't really operate. Yet, Google only has a handful of Muslim Arab VPs, less than a handful now that I'm gone. I really appreciate all the resources that Google invested in me to train me to be the most vulnerable, authentic, pioneering leader I can be, and to apply my full passion and my full agency to make everything around me better. Thank you, Google, for that. And thank you for all of the DEI lessons and principles that you taught me. I admire each one of them. Unfortunately, I just learned that I was only allowed to bring half of my true, authentic self to work. The other half was clearly not welcome. And I don't believe this would have happened if I had addressed any other DEI topic. Thank you for listening.